Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. So, I guess we'll just jump right into it. Basically, I wanted to find out first of all, I did some research and saw that you were kind of like maybe thinking of ending acting. Like you were like, I think this is not for me. And then somehow ended up on Outlander. So, what was that process?
Whoops.
Like, what happened?
Jump right in at the deep end. I mean, yeah, obviously this industry is tough. There's much worse industries for sure, but there's like I always like talk about the fact that there's very much two sides of acting, right? You either like hit the ground running and there's just you're drowning in jobs, or there's nothing. It's very much famine or drought, and I mean, I've gone through. If to many people, I've been very lucky. I've worked in loads and loads of theaters, been in some incredible like BAFTA winning shows and things. But yeah, like I've gone probably about two stints now of like 2 years without work, and like I've been lucky to be auditioning, but it's just the constant rejection. Definitely, I think people used to ask me like, how do you deal with that, and I don't know. I think it's really I think when you're the product as well, it's like a weird thing where it's like it feels like it's reflected on you and you as a person and how you look. Like there's just so it's an absolute minefield for mental health for sure. And I just really hit a wall, and I felt like I was just flogging a dead horse, and I was over it. I was very much over it. And I think part of it was just that I just feel very much like a square peg in a round hole consistently. So I think that was like the toughest thing. And I went on a break, which actually was the most healthiest thing I've ever done. And I didn't know that was possible. As an actor, you just got to be like on it all the time. Drop everything, friends, birthdays, whatever. Like you just have to drop it all, learn lines, and travel across the country constantly. Yeah, I think I took a break, and it meant that I didn't know if I wasn't getting jobs, which was half of the battle. So that definitely helped. And then I tentatively said yes to auditioning to Outlander again, because this was the fourth part in Outlander that I had gone up for. This was
Wow.
Yeah.
So you auditioned or were put up for 4 different roles to get them.
Yeah, I auditioned and like got, I'd maybe get recalls, whatever. I'd send in tapes, go down to London or whatever. Since season 1. So probably before I was aware of Outlander, I guess before, or Outlander as a TV show, before any of it had started. Obviously, book readers have been fans for decades, but so I mean, that audition was the worst audition of my life. I don't know if you've seen any of that, but have you heard of this? Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. And I was actually going to ask you, I'm like, what 4 parts did you try to go up for?
Okay. So the first one I auditioned for was for in the 40s timeline, with the scene with Frank where he meets a woman in the bar who like leads him down a fake trail to find the Highlander. It was a small part, but a good one nonetheless. And I just graduated and I went down to I was in London, so I saw the London-based casting director, which means I was actually in the room for this audition. It wasn't like a self-tape, but she gets choked. Frank chokes her up against the wall. So I had to choke myself up against the wall, and I stepped back on the casting director's backdrop. The backdrop fell, the scaffolding fell, and the pole fell on my head. And and it's all on tape somewhere. So grim. And then I had to
definitely would have happened to me.
I had to reconstruct it and then do my tape again. And I was on the phone to my agent crying afterwards, it was the worst audition of my life. And I was so new. I was new, sparkling, new actor. And that was just grim. So I auditioned for that role, and then I auditioned for Morag Mackenzie, Roger Mackenzie's great grandmother, who he meets on the boat over to America. And she was a similar sort of role, gets Roger in trouble again. And has like, you know, a young child baby. So I think it's a similar vibe. I think the audition scene for that was much more flirtatious, or yeah, I made it that way. But yeah, whatever the 1700s version of flirting is. And then I auditioned for Eppie the Hooer, who has that a wonderful scene with Stephen Bonnet. But yeah, I mean, all the actresses that got it are great, and I can see why I didn't get them. But yeah, I'm so happy that I held out for this. But yeah,
it's so funny because I feel like with Amy, there are similar characteristics for all four, like all of your previous auditions. There are like pieces, I think, kind of each one that you tried out for that didn't get, which is kind of funny. But as a viewer, I can't imagine you playing those. Like I see you fully as Amy, because like you were so good that I couldn't imagine you swapping out anyway. So I guess that's the whole beauty of the casting, right? That they can see something that like we don't see, and they're able to put something together.
Always like definitely these two sides of acting, you know, unless you are a name that is going to be putting butts on seats, ultimately for the most part you tend to get cast and tend to get seen as things that are close to yourself, especially in TV. Theatre's a bit more flexible, and you know, I've played things that are further away from me because the audience are also further away, which helps. But yeah, in TV it's very much they can kind of smell when you're not, when you're putting on a bit of a front.
But I found it funny because when you were talking about like, yeah, like I think I don't know if I was like done or like how hard this was and I needed a mental break. The irony is like people can't see it. I could see you, but what they'll hear is that behind you is a Thelma and Louise poster, which I find hilariously ironic because you're like, yeah, I don't know, I needed a break, like I was done. And then there's this beautiful like poster behind you, and I love that movie, and a lot of stuff stands behind that movie.
There's a funny story behind this because well, actually my mom had been telling me to watch it for years, and I don't know, I just had putting it off, and it's my favorite movie. And the more I delved into it, the more I loved, because actually I started writing during COVID, like the very first lockdown in like March 2020, and I just come back from LA, and I was like convinced that I was going to stick in acting. I was like, I'm going to do it, and then COVID hit, so I was like, ugh. And I started writing, and I'd never delved into any of that before. And yeah, Thelma and Louise is a huge inspiration to me because it's Callie Curry that wrote the script. It's like one of her, I think, her first ever screenplay, or certainly like our first produced thing, which is just absolute madness. And I actually I wrote a pilot. The first thing I ever wrote was a pilot, and a TV pilot, and it's now been optioned, which is wild. And actually I named one of the characters Callie after Callie Curry that wrote Thelma and Louise, because I don't know, she's just cool. And also it's like Callie Caledonia, and it's a Scottish character. So yeah.
So that's amazing. So like, to kind of go off track, I mean, I'll bring it back to Outlander, I promise. So during COVID, what inspired you to literally just go, you know what, I'm gonna write a pilot?
Yeah, I mean, it was never something that I thought I could do. I mean, I've been bloody Diana Gabaldon didn't think she could do it either. Like, Outlander was a practice, so like that kind of energy I'm like here for. I'm very much like, let me try this one thing, and then I guess I feel like I've got more control than I ever have with acting, weirdly enough, because it's just like there's nothing really in between you and a laptop. Like, it's just like it's on you if you don't do the work. But in terms of RCS, when I was there, I went from 2011 to 2014, and we've got a module called On the Verge, where for like these 2 weeks you do something that isn't acting. So it could be writing, directing, or whatever. One of my best friends, Megan Tyler, who's an incredible playwright and writer, who was in my year as an actor, she wrote a play and I directed it. So that was my first, like, I've directed for theatre as well, so that was like my first experience of directing for theatre. But even then I was like, no, I can't write. And there's this weird stigma about it, which I've realized now I've come out of it, is that I think when you're at drama school and you're working you're acting 9 to 6 every day, and you've got a network around you that understands you, and you're never, it feels very much like you have a reason to wake up in the morning, and the reason is the thing that you love, and that's very helpful. And that's 3 years that you go through that, and you get a degree at the end of it. It's so bloody jammy. And then you've got this endless abyss afterwards. And I think when you're in that bubble, it's really easy to hope, or I don't think anyone ever assumes that they will get work when they leave. Like, so there's this weird stigma about writing your own work is like only because you've not been successful. It's like it's a means to an end kind of thing. And weirdly, I don't write for myself because I feel like this industry has pummeled my confidence so low that I'm always like, no, someone else would be better at it. And also I just kind of, I don't want to. There may come a time where I write in something or director or whatever, but I feel like, you know, it takes a village, doesn't it? The reason I started was because my best friend Chess forced me to write this story, and she was going to Norway to stay in a cabin in the woods for a month to write a horror movie. And she was like, I don't want to go alone. Can you come and be killed with me? And I was like, okay. It was just after things had got relaxed, you know, flight wise and stuff, but it was still, you know, there still really wasn't things going on, things weren't filming. And yeah, we went into a cabin in the woods. And I guess what I've been surprised with is how much writing, especially dialogue, is like part of you as an actor.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, it was kind of smart for you and your friend to like go off, because when you're a journalist and like I write something and I put it out there, I kind of like forget, like, I'm like, yeah, like no one's going to read it. And like, you know, people read it and I'm like, oh, that's great. You know, like, and you get your positive and your negative. But I feel like, you know, for me, I took advantage of it as I got known in the journalism world and in the PR world. I feel like you did perfect timing of taking advantage of it, even if you wrote beforehand. But like when Outlander is coming out, people know you now. So like your name's known. So to write something might give you a little more, you know, of an umph than if you just like graduated, no one knew who you were, you wrote something, and then you're like working 5 jobs and like trying to get it, you know, picked up or whatever. Oh, so I think you did like a great. And then also having a friend, I think, helps too.
It's so hard. Yeah, the routine thing is really, I've not mastered it, and that's what I'm about to go into, is because the script has been optioned. Yeah, I've got kind of addicted, and I've written a short, and I've written this pilot, and I've written a play, and I'm writing. I'm calling it a book. I'm doing a proper. Oh God, what's her name? Fox. I'm like, yeah, I did it myself. Yeah, I've written a book. It's definitely not a masterpiece. But I've not written a book. I'm starting to. But I'm just like, I don't really know what I'm seeing what I can do, because obviously, you know, when someone is like, I like this, but it'd be better as a play, or I like this, but it's a film, it's not a series or whatever. I think it's good to be able to do all of that. But yeah, having like your tribe that you can send stuff to, that you trust, is like so important.
It always starts off scary and then you kind of learn from it. But I do agree, like having a tribe and someone that you can kind of send your stuff to, and you know, talk about it, and you know, even be comfortable with someone going like, hey, like here's like, you know, nice criticism, like these are some things like you might want to change, and just like to feel comfortable. So like, you know, that's really nice. So basically there was a Supernova does scholarships, and they raise money for students that attend RCS, which is a school in Scotland that focuses on the arts and offers amazing, like, you know, a million different programs that, you know, students can attend to. And so they host a gala every single year. So you were sweet enough to go, and, you know, you talk about your experience on Outlander, talk about your experience at the school. To have you at the gala was so nice. And all the donors get to come in and they get to see you guys live, like, you know, and there's a whole planned out kind of like agenda. And, you know, you're there to just talk and support about the school basically, and like your experience there. So why was it so important for you to participate in that?
Yeah, I mean, I was approached by them, and I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of their scholarship before, but this is only the second year that they've done it. So like it was brand new, and like very much, you know, in and of itself. As a I graduated like 7 years ago or something. But I am extremely lucky, because as a Scottish student, our fees are mainly paid by the government, right? That was extremely fortunate for me. It took me 4 years to get into the conservatoire. Like, I don't know why 4 is my lucky number. I auditioned when I was like 17, 18, 19, and then 20. And I had got into other places, and I'd done like the foundation degree at one place, which was extremely expensive. And then kept going until I got in there, because that was the only place I wanted to go. I have nothing but good things. I mean, you know, it's an institution. Every institution is learning, and we're all learning together. So, you know, there's not, no institution is without its issues. but I had an incredible time there. For me, it was really important to talk about that at the gala because and talk about the realities of it, of being in this industry. I think it's all well and good to like get a job or be an actor and be quite up your own arse about it, like and pretend like it's come easy. I very much wanted to go there and talk to these donors and stuff about the realities of how hard it is to get into a school like that and how hard it is afterwards, especially financially.
So if you were in school at this time and you had gotten, you know, what you got from the government, but you had a leftover bill, or you were graduating and you have to get headshots now and reels and websites and all these things that nobody tells you that you have to pay for, you know, how would that scholarship had made a difference if that was available for you, and it would be if you were awarded one?
I mean, completely life-changing, like genuinely, because every opportunity, like as an actor, I think what a lot of people don't realize, or maybe they do, but like you are talking about like literally one audition away. And I'm not chasing fame by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think any actor worth their salt is actually chasing that. That is the difference between things moving fast for you, things moving slow, like one audition. And if you can't afford to get on, I cannot tell you the amount of times that I took the bus to London from Glasgow, which is a 10-hour bus. And it's beyond grim. I'm not going to lie to you, like it's grim. And up and down, because it was like, and it was maybe like 10-15 pounds or whatever. It was like all I could afford and all my family could afford. And, you know, I've been very fortunate that they've been able to support me in what little, you know, way they can. And I'm an only child, which does help. But like, having to like not being able to go to an audition because you can't afford it is the reality of having something happen for you and having something propel you into, you know, being the actors that the majority of people, you know, look on their TV or on their socials and see and think that that's like, it's just any of that money. It is just so expensive. And even like, although I will say that, I mean, our equity here is like 140 something pounds a year, and Spotlight's around the same. SAG in the US is like $3,000 to join or something. It's like, I mean, yeah. And I think the assumption is that you will be, you know, only when you're earning a certain amount of money are you actually legitimate in this industry. And I think that's, it's just not the way.
People all, you know, just think like, oh, if you study as an actor, you're going to graduate and you're going to become famous. And then if you don't become famous, until then, you don't really have to worry too much. You'll work other jobs. Like, but they don't realize there's so much money and so much time and so much goes into the auditioning and so much goes into the headshots and all of the stuff that you need. It's not really like so simple as just graduating and showing up to an audition. But I was talking about this the other day. When you're like a kid, I feel like, you know, a young child, like 4, you know, whatever, before like our fun insecurities that we somehow learn. And like, you know, before we start doubting ourselves and all these horrible things kind of we put into play with the world, you would like draw something and you think it's like the best thing you've ever done. And like your mom picks it up and like you have no qualms.
Yeah, you're like, I'll be a cop and you be the robber, and I'll be this and you be this.
Yeah. And you don't even think about it.
Yeah. Do you know, on this subject, one of the reasons I started writing was because I did The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and that talks about that, like that sort of like you have to write lists of like things that you liked when you were a kid, or like, you know, candy that you got when you were a kid, and like you like actively over the course of 12 weeks like get back into that vibe. And I had written things down that I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, yeah, I used to like rollerblading, or I used to like roller skating or whatever. And then like a week later, I'm like looking on our Craigslist is called Gumtree, and I'm like sitting in a driveway in Bear's Den buying this teenager's roller skates offer because I'm like, and this person again. And before you get to that place of just complete self-doubt and rejection, and I think that's why I have much more respect. You know, I respect everybody, anyone doing any sort of craft like this, I respect. But I think that's why a lot of people respect Sam Heughan, is because he's really honest about like how he sort of, you know, things weren't going well for him, and like it's just the reality of how, you know, overnight something like that can change for you. But he was he was working in incredible theatres in the UK and doing incredible work, and like just not getting, recognized for his talent the same way as he is now, obviously, because he's in a big thing. But like that graft and that the good person that you have to be to do that and not have it handed to you is I think what I was experiencing on that gala when they were talking about him, and and his sort of videos and stuff that he'd done for it. And on set, like, he was just so lovely, and they must, Sam and Katrina must have so many people come and go all the time. But I think the fact that they, it was my biggest job that I'd done. It was most of the people's biggest job that they'd done, and it was Sam and Kat's biggest job. Like, so I think everybody can go back to their first day on set when they don't feel like, you've got maybe not got the goods to back it up, and it's hard, especially in TV and film, because you get zero rehearsal. In theatre, people are like, oh, you're doing it in front of loads of people, and you're doing it in front of thousands of people, but you
rehearse for like months,
for a month. Like just after Outlander, I played the lead in a huge theatre here, and like that was like the most intimidating role to step into that, but I was comfortable by the time we got, not comfortable, but like I knew what I was doing by press night. Like film and TV, you just kind of thrust upon a set that you've never seen before and thrust around people that you've never met before. And it's trying to concentrate where all the hardware and everything is going on around you is like another skill in itself. But I think the respect and of having done theatre, at least having a respect for it, and a respect for other people being uncomfortable rather than stepping on set with any sort of ego. There's just no room for that. And if you're coming at it from, my perspective, my trajectory, or Sam's trajectory, where you're not graduating immediately, famous overnight.
There's a much more of an appreciation. And I think also, like we were talking about, like your inner child, right? So like when you're in theater, you get to play that inner child. And I feel like you work on bringing that back into you, like, and trying to, and now listen, it's not a perfect, situation, right? You're still auditioning, you hear rejection, and, there's still a shield you have to put up. But like when you do a play or you get something that you are working on, I do feel like there's ways of you kind of shaking off some of that and getting back into your inner child and having fun and playing with it. And I think that shows. And I actually think, I agree with you. I actually really think that, yes, would I want everybody to graduate and start making millions of dollars? Of course, right? That's what you want to, do. But to start in the arts, whether it's theater, to start maybe on a small TV show that nobody watch, whatever it is, to learn and to work and to sweat and then get something big. I feel like you and the people I've interviewed always seem much more nicer, and like because they appreciate so much more. And versus people that I've talked to that got it like their first audition, and I'm like, oh well, that's great. Like I'm sure millions of people really want to hear about that. But again, I don't knock those people. Obviously, that's great for them and it's wonderful. But I do think there has to you can't deny that there's much more of an appreciation if you worked much harder for it. And so. For you, how you mentioned like Sam and Kat were so amazing. And obviously there's hundreds of people in Outlander. I mean, I just can't even like my brain over the years, with all these people kind of in and out. What was it like for you when you stepped on set? What was the experience like?
It's hard. Like I've never done this before where you're going into something that's been going for 6 years. They're a family, they're playing a family and they're also a family as a cast. Like that's, and you can never, there's absolutely no expectation that you'd ever really penetrate that or anything. Like it's, it is what it is. And, I'm very much aware of that. Also, we did it during a pandemic. So that was like a huge, huge thing. We were like separated. We had to keep our masks on. It felt, there was like a twinge of guilt whenever you were like, especially at the start, when I think I was filming for like 6 months over the, on and off very much so, but things eventually got a little bit easier. Then we were able to move outside because there wasn't snowstorms. So it was tricky. My first scene was when Richard offers Amy the cabin, and there was quite a lot of people on set. It was the first time I'd met Richard. It was in fact, I'd seen him around at the BAFTAs and stuff like that, but I'd never like properly chatted to him. First time I met Sophie, first time I met Alex Vlahos, and also the first time I'd physically met Caleb, that plays my son. And that was a weird like thing because he was looking at me for answers that I didn't necessarily have because I hadn't been on a set for 2 years, and it's just this kind of, they've already been working for a couple of weeks. I think the director and stuff and everybody by the monitors is like far away. So if you have a question, there's just really that always takes me by surprise how sometimes it feels quite separate, and you've got to quickly because of continuity, you've got to quickly choreograph something that you stick to, putting the same hand on. It is like very overwhelming. Yes, they sort of introduce you, but also everybody's got a job to do. Like, you know, the crew, it moves so fast, so you just kind of expect to go in and just like do it, to be completely honest. And that's not always the case, but with the pressures of, and actually that specific scene had been rewritten almost overnight, maybe over the course of 2 days, but probably overnight, because we got a script in I think the day before, it had been moved inside, and they've been moving most of the scenes outside so that we had ventilation for COVID, but then there was a snowstorm, so they had to rewrite it inside. So like they're all stressing because obviously all of their storyboarding, all of their plan has been completely thrown. So I don't know, it's very much like you're expected to turn up and do the job. There's no like,
it's like chaos.
It's chaos. There's very little placating or like positive reinforcement, which definitely is tough, because it's hard to put something out there and like not know. I can remember really struggling with that, being like, does anyone want to tell? Like, oh, it's just like, and then a lot of the focus at that point was going on to Caleb, because he'd never done any acting before, he'd never done anything, and he, God bless him, like that was a really hard first time ever on camera, and his job in that moment was to like grab all the attention and embarrass me and like get me out of the room. So we're trying to just get stuff that was like, you know, something that he could latch on to. So I was finding myself kind of directing him a little bit, which was interesting, to be like, no, like get me out of the room, like you won't damage my skirt, like just get me out of the room, like, because it's the whole thing goes, you know, it's like a domino effect from that. But yeah, I mean, Richard was lovely, like right off the bat when we were doing the line run for that scene. I think I said, yeah, I could never repay, and he was like, I could think of a couple of ways or whatever. Like, he's very much the class clown. But yeah, I mean, we're both from Glasgow. Like, people have been like, did he put you off or whatever? I'm like, I mean, you know, he's more comfortable than I am, 100%. So like he can get away with a lot more, definitely. But you know, when the cameras aren't rolling, like we're both from Glasgow, sarcasm, like I basically bleed sarcasm, like that's very much my banter, like, you know. So, and I think that's the similarity between like her and Roger, because it's just like a little taste of home, and you know,
yeah,
she's not very, you know, comfortable and needs help. So,
but I think, and I think that's probably like a nice intro for you, because you're working on set, you don't really know anyone, you're not really expecting to break into anybody's like secret, you know, kind of friend circle. You go to do your job, and then like you meet Richard, you guys both happen to be from the same place, joking around. As you know, you did more episodes, and maybe, you know, you cross paths with other people that you might not have been acting with, like Sam or Kat. I feel like maybe, you know, and I could be wrong because I'm not on set, but maybe like it was a little easier, or maybe, you know, because you're not like a one-timer, like you're not in one episode and 2-second scene and you're gone, because you're like a kind of like revolving character and you're in multiple episodes. I would assume like then they come up to you, and if they're about to do something, they're like, hey, like nice to meet you, like, you know, that kind of thing. So is that kind of how it like slowly kind of goes as you're
but the scenes with Sam and Kat, there was always a lot of other people on set, like along with background, and there was a lot of things going on. But yeah, that was what really struck me, was like how lovely they were, like right off the bat, and just complete, you know, we were filming in the worst conditions. I mean, it was, you know, it was January, there was snowstorm, all the snow that you see is real. I mean, it was beautiful, but it was bloody cold, and we've got fingerless gloves, which are beautiful, but not no good to man or beast. And yeah, so I think, you know, there was moments where like me and Sam were talking about as we've both worked in the same theaters and stuff, and he was telling me about that kind of stuff, while he was like really concerned about my fingers that looked like they were going to fall off. Just like they were just very, very friendly. And I think yeah, it's testament to just like don't be a dick. And I think with me and Richard, it was a little bit, we got on, but it took a little bit more time, because I think I was really nervous. Like I remember we were about to do the scene with the frog, and I had to like cry and all this, and I had a very clear, because in the book I had a very clear idea of how that scene would go, and then it turned up and frog didn't move, and like we had to like change stuff, and like all of that. Just I was nervous about it, and obviously it was my first scene with him, and I'd gone up to him because we'd just done this when he's given a sermon at the church. Because of COVID, most of us, everybody else was outside, and they just kept me in to like have an eye line with, and he had to give this big sermon about fear or whatever, like to which ended up just being voiceover in the final edit. He had to just give this huge speech like he was a minister, really confidently, and I remember like afterwards, like we were walking up to the tent, and I hadn't properly got to speak to him just like one-on-one, and we were filming the next day, and I just said to him like, well done, like that was really, really good. And he was like, oh, like thank you, whatever, like, and it, I think everybody has, it's weird for me to go up to someone like that and be like, you did good, like as if that's not fucking obvious, but also like, who doesn't like to be kind of, I don't know, because that's the thing that I think you miss doing TV and film as opposed to theatre. You get instant response. Like when you're like I was just in, I mean it was a comedy, and there was definitely moments of, there was audiences where it was a bit quieter, and you were like, okay, you need to kind of ease into things, how to kind of land jokes and land lines in a way that will get the punch, like, it's like it is a totally different thing. But there's just none of that, and when everyone's doing their own jobs and you're expected to be able to do their job, I mean him certainly is expected to be able to play Roger, like of course he is, like he's very similar to that character, and he's doing his own accent, so there's not a lot of room to kind of necessarily get that wrong, but he pitched it so well and so earnestly and stuff, and I wanted to kind of tell him that, and I think that was kind of eventually what kind of broke the ice a little bit, because it was just like, thanks, like I recognize you as like another actor that like just, it's just nice.
Yeah, and I think I read that, oh my god, like to have to act that with one person sitting there, and then on both ends, so like it's great, like for Richard, I get it, the eye line, but then having to act like that there's a whole room full, and then we ended up not really seeing that. But then for you too, like it's almost like, like when someone sings to you and you're sitting and they're staring at you and you're like, I feel uncomfortable because like you're the only one like sitting in the room, so like you both have to be in the moment to where it's believable. I think when weird things like that happen because of television, like these weird kind of things that they have to throw you in last minute, or these changes, or the snow, or like whatever comes up, and COVID, I think, although difficult, bonds you. And I feel like in a way you got in at a good time because of all of these issues, because everybody was going through it. So it's almost like you can kind of relate just as a human being. Like you just like, I'm cold, you're cold, like this is, completely. And then they'll start joking and everybody kind of just does what they have to do to get by.
That was probably the first thing that he'd said to me, was like, thanks for staying in for an eye line, because like I think someone gave me the option to go back to like the easy up or whatever, and I was like, no, like I mean, because the reality of being an actor, being a working actor, they call it, when you're going in between different jobs and stuff, is that like it's not that I wanted to quit acting, because I absolutely adore this job. Like when I'm doing it, I adore it. Unfortunately, the reality for most actors is that they maybe, get to do it 2-3 months out of the year, and the rest of the time they're like grafting or doing other jobs or whatever. So like when I'm on a set, I want to be on the set. Like I want to, and also like with screenwriting and directing, and I'm starting to direct for film as well, I'm kind of like, I want to know what lines is going on. I want to know why they're choosing to do that shot, why they're cutting to that. Like I want to be, and you don't get that. So it seems madness to me to kind of be like, yeah, I'm going to just like peace out, and you can do that when you're working for 6 years on something. That's when that kind of, and it's not a bad attitude. It's just like, I need to rest because I'm also in tomorrow, or I maybe wasn't in the next day or whatever. So I just like was very much laughing, soaking it all up as much as I could.
Well, no, you did such a great job. And, I read the books, and what I try to do, I read them all, but what I try to do is like before the new season, I'll read the book that's like attached to that season. Cause like you forget, like there's so much to try to like remember. So like I was reading it, and then I think I was like halfway through, and like they had already introed your character because it was such a shortened season. And we, as press, we get them early. So like I had watched a lot of it. I just remember going, wait, so she doesn't like hit on him or like try to steal him, right? Because like that was like the first like instinct. And I'm sure like a lot of people, if they don't read the books, are going, who's Amy? Like, why is she like taking all of Roger's time? But then like when you really get to know her, and then you hear obviously like Roger's solely with Brianna and had no, didn't even think that thought didn't even cross his mind. But that this woman, like, to just like realize that this woman literally lost her husband, came over, is completely alone, and someone is willing to build her cabin and help her, and like they're giving her food and like helping her survive on her feet till she could grow her garden, until she could get her stuff kind of up and running, was like amazing to me. And like I said, you did such a good job. And I don't know with the makeup and the clothes or whatever, but when I first saw you, I was like, oh my God, she's so pretty. Like, and like you, it's not that you don't look pretty on the show, but it's like everything's pulled back, everything's very reserved and very, and like it should be. It's a time period, right? Like, so everything's kind of pulled back and you don't see that much, and you're wearing like a little, a hat and things like that. So I kept going, like every time I would see pictures of her, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. They must have had to work so hard to like pull everything back and take all of this off and
it's very, I guarantee you it's very much the opposite. Like,
no, I think it's extremely hard to make you look like a normal, I always call it like a normal human being. Like I wake up and I look like normal. Like that's how I felt like it was. Like when Outlander people come on, I'm like, oh, they look like me, like normal. And then like I see them in real life and I'm like, oh no, they're still pretty and perfect.
No. No, don't ever say that. You have got, let me guarantee it, you have got it wrong. I have a ring light on. I have makeup on. I have the Zoom blur my face slightly, very slightly, but I have more wrinkles than this. I have acne. I'm a normal person.
Crazy. Anyone listening to this is crazy. She's beautiful. You're crazy. But
I'm going to fight that, because it's just, I don't look like this. What you're saying right now, I don't look like that. I look like how I look in Outlander, because I feel like it's really.
But even in Outlander, I mean, it's not like you're like ugly in Outlander. Like,
but I still have makeup. Like, well, this is the thing.
In Outlander,
It's
just they pull a lot back. That's all. Like in Outlander, I see you and go, oh my God, she's so unattractive. I saw her, like I saw Amy and I was like, oh, she's like pretty. And nobody would have thought that Roger, might have straight, like, because that was kind of like what some people were thinking if they didn't book. We wouldn't have thought that if you were like, oh, like this is some unattractive woman. Like you're pretty. So like, obviously it's like an attractive woman and this guy is helping her. And, it's a little, at the time, I guess for the time period, it's a little odd if you're married to be helping like a single woman, all this stuff. His reasoning makes sense. And because they're from a different time, it all makes sense. So to us, but I remember in the very beginning, I was like, because everything's so pulled back and so reserved and you're in these dresses and what everyone kind of has to wear, everyone looks different, like Pat, Sam, all of that, everybody looks different.
I think
so. Amy as a character, I found so interesting because she didn't give up, and and they're giving her and helping her, obviously, to help her survive. But I'm excited, towards the end, because there was so much drama going on. We didn't get to see, too much of where Amy is and like kind of how she's progressing. And so, I'm hoping, and again, I know you can't say anything, but I know that, a couple episodes were filmed this season for next season. So I'm assuming some of those might have you in them, but I'm hoping that for season 6, we see a little more, almost like a status update of how you're doing, because I would be so happy to just see you, with your kids and like see, and I say see Amy with her kids and like in a nice, we obviously saw the cabin, but like in a much more filled out cabin, in a much nicer, having your garden growing, and then maybe some really nice guy that doesn't care that you have kids comes along. And
listen,
so like, I just hope we see you next season.
Yeah, I want our setup. We need to I want like a Bachelor kind of Fraser's Ridge crossover where we just like have our date, like the full everybody. There are so many eligible single men on the on the Ridge that are like absolute tens, like
Yes.
Yeah.
Like everyone's good on this show. You guys are all good looking. It's like ridiculous. So like I pictured like if Outlander was turned into a reality show, I feel like everybody would just be hooking up with everybody because like everybody's just so attractive. Like
there's nothing else to do. There's no TV. There is no Outlander in Outlander. There is no binging. There is only I mean, what you're going to do when your home's being invaded, you're going to have sex. That's what you're going to do.
And like what else do you do?
Or in a tent. Oh my God, those scenes. Can I just give a shout out to Vanessa Coffey, who's the intimacy coordinator on this season, who worked on those two scenes with Sam and Kat, and I mean, I wasn't there. That would have been weird, but I have those sex scenes in that last episode were so just so brilliant.
Yeah, I definitely, and you know what? It's funny too, because there wasn't one, obviously, and like, Sam kind of like advocated for that. And I was wondering, I'm like, well, how does that work? Because they kind of know each other already and everyone's kind of done one. Does it make a difference? And in that last episode, that was the first, it had been many episodes since we had kind of seen a scene anyway, but obviously the coordinator, I think, was there for the first, but in that last episode, it was definitely apparent because the way it looked so much more realistic, and the way it was shot, I was like, I feel like I'm seeing something I shouldn't see. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was very intimate, very together. So then you go, that's what they do. Like, that's how they
get to work.
Elevate it.
Jamie Payne, that directed that block, I didn't get to work with that director, but like, I've been speaking to Vanessa because I knew Vanessa from my days at RCS. She taught me when I was at the conservatoire, and she's been brought on this, and obviously like the director did an incredible job as well, but like, I mean, there is so much. I mean, and that's a whole other podcast to talk about the
because there's so much involved in there, and not to say that any of the scenes prior to having a coordinator were bad. Obviously, people were obsessed with them. We all loved to see all these like intimate scenes with them, but you can notice the difference. You can notice like that there was someone that came in and how it was lit and how it was shot and things that were moved, and also behind the scene things that we're not involved in as viewers. So the things that they do for you to make you feel more comfortable, I think is very important too. So it's like props to Sam and Kat, for Sophie and Richard, for doing things where they had figured out, right? Like, are you okay if I do that? Am I okay? Okay. And they're doing all of that stuff. But when you have someone come in, I think you feel so much more comfortable and almost like you have a voice too, because you might feel uncomfortable saying something to someone else that you're working with. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But you have a third party that's neutral, that all they're there is to make sure you're comfortable, the other person's comfortable, and it looks good. My favorite episode of the whole show of the season was the finale. And I felt like it was because those scenes in particular, I went like, whoa, like, those were very different. And that's where I like kind of saw it and understand. Cause I think when Sam first announced it, people were like, well, why? They've been doing it for, I'm like, yeah, but you have to understand, like, women might not feel comfortable saying a certain thing. It doesn't matter how close you are with somebody. Like, you just might not feel comfortable. Or as an actor, why do you have to worry about that on top of everything else? Like,
God, exactly.
Like, there's so many things you have to worry about. Let someone else handle that and come in and just tell you, move here, move that. Don't worry, this is what's going to show this one. And you don't even have to think about it. So I think that just eliminated a lot of them having to like worry about it. And I think for future actors, that it's going to make a huge difference for any other ones that have scenes that are intimate like that, bringing somebody on.
So it's so essential. I think that it's been a long time coming, because obviously you're never going to do the Battle of Culloden, or they're never going to do a fight between two people without it being choreographed. It is choreography, really, at the end of the day. Like, it's making sure that you don't damage another person.
The invention of this coordinator, I think, should be mandatory for every, like, this new kind of like title, I think should be mandatory on every set. And I can't believe for so many years and for so many sets and so many movies, it was like, we'll work it out. Crazy.
I think the next step up from that is like just to say that obviously there are assaults and things that take place on set and on jobs where you're currently on that job, and there might be policy in place to help you, but what a lot of people, myself including, are experiencing is that obviously those policies and that safety net that's now been put in place on a job does often fail freelancers, because we're going from job to job, and quite often you're working with people that are, it might not necessarily have been like, oh, you do this for me and I will give you this job, but it's like lateral abuse, where it's people that are your peers that you're then, and people that and friends that like, it is an absolute mess. And I think I've been trying to advocate a lot for other people, but there's only so far you can do it on your own. So like, try to work with equity and things, and anything that we can do to have systems in place for that, because when you get a cast list in and there's someone on that name that you cannot and will not work with, but is someone who is not, if you're not in the film, who's going to know That is really where the really tricky things, come
Yeah,
into.
and I do think that's important for people to realize and hear, because I've also been on a lot of sets. And when I've been on sets and I've seen something happen, or I've seen someone say something, and like, you report it, you're risking your job because the person that you're most likely reporting is making more than you and is a star or whatever on the show. And I've seen those reports kind of get buried. Sometimes it kills me when I hear, like, I'll hear like someone's name and they go, "Oh my God, I love them. And I love everything they do." And I want to be like, like, if you only knew like the stuff that was going on, but people don't know. And that's a huge problem in this industry. Like, if you go to the higher ups, quote unquote, and you make a complaint, like, that should be filed, that should be available for public, that should be. And a lot of times it's like, well, you know what? Don't worry. Next time we won't have you work with that. Or don't worry, this won't happen again. Or
We won't leave you alone with them. And
yeah. Or we'll give you like 3 extra scenes and we'll put you somewhere with someone else. It's all always to protect that person that did it. And it's never to protect the person that got something done to them, whatever it was. And I've seen it on sets, and I've actually, I have a big mouth. So like, I've actually said something, like, I've walked up and been like, this is unacceptable, unacceptable. And I've said stuff, but the fact that like you would even have to think to say something is ridiculous. Like, so I agree with you. There needs to be protocols, not only, obviously where you work, but I think are all around the board. Like SAG needs to have policies in place. And like, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I mean, the beginning of an intimate coordinator is nice, but there's so many other things. On a kind of positive, just like kind of swing it back, you did notice a difference. And so it's very apparent that it's needed, because I noticed a difference as a viewer. And so, I'm excited to see kind of, like where things go. And like I said, I would love for us to get an update on Amy, and I'm hoping we see you all of next season. I know they're like super tight-lipped with everything, but there are 4 episodes from the season airing next season. So I'm crossing my fingers that you're in one of those. Will we keep seeing Amy? Like, because she is on the Ridge. I mean, and there are issues, I know, Ridge abound within the Ridge that will be coming up, but like, will we keep seeing her? Because I don't picture her moving anytime soon. So
well, I hope so. Like, yeah, I obviously can't say anything, but like, I know she's in all of the other books, and like, yeah, I've not read the rest of them yet. I've not read book 9, so listen.
I haven't read book 9 either. I'm a little behind, okay. So I haven't either.
Bear with me on that. But yeah, so yeah, I hope we see her again. And because I think she becomes like a lovely, I think it's like a more recent journey of someone that's sort of like still not settled there. And I'd love to see her shack up with a man, for sure.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful, I think Amy has a really beautiful story too. So like, I'm kind of excited to see people see it. And I think you do such a great job like playing her. It's so believable. I mean, like, literally, like, from the second you came on screen, I was like, oh, like, I feel for this woman. And like, it's just so believable. There wasn't a single second where I like, where I watched it and I pulled out and went, who is this actress? Or like, who's this? I was just in, and just so believed by everything that you said and did. I just felt so much for you, because we are in present day, obviously, and what that must have felt like and what that must be like. And I think so many women relate to your character. And so I'm excited to see them kind of see her, hopefully, evolve as the books evolve, because she is in them, and there's more stuff coming. And hopefully we get to
we'll see. Like the screen, the writers have do an incredible job like adapting existing material, and such good existing. And Diane is an incredible writer. Like, there's so much gold in those books, and they can't use everything. So like, right. I know, like, I know that that's not always possible. And, she's on the Ridge to for good. So I think
there's a lot about Amy, and I think we all want to follow her. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We love you. You're so amazing on the show. I'll end with, like, I always like to give you guys, time if you want to like promote any new projects, things you're working on. I know you talked about a lot of your writing stuff. Hopefully more Outlander stuff. I'll say it, you can't. Hopefully more Outlander stuff. I don't know. I have no secret script either, but hopefully more Outlander stuff. that we'll see you on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on socials for my sins, but yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and yeah, I've got loads of behind the scenes stuff to still post. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter at Joanne Thomson without a P 22. So give me a follow and give me a shout, and I'll like all your stuff and follow you too. Obviously, I'm working on this pilot I can't properly speak about, but it's like this incredible queer geriatric adventure with two female queer leads over 60. It's like a road trip. It's in Scotland and America, so it's very much an Outlander fans wavelength. And yeah, I'm working on something with Mark Rowley, who plays Finn in The Last Kingdom, and he's having me on to talk.
Mark.
Oh yeah, he's having me on to talk about writing and sort of tips that I've learned from other people and things that have worked for me, and we're raising money. All the funds and tickets are donated to the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. So that should be open. So I'll put that on my Instagram, and I will be at Outlandish Vancouver in Seattle, the convention that's there, October, September.
I want to thank you. So thank you so much for coming. And then we look forward to like all of your future things. And I have a feeling this is not the last time we'll be having you on. So we'll be talking again about a ton of stuff.